What's up guys, Archangel Manga here, and today's series I want to talk about today is Noein, To Your Other Self. Now before I get started with this review, I just want to say that I really enjoyed this series, and I see a lot of differing mixed opinions on this series as a whole, and people saying that they've really found it boring and others praising it for its kind of different take on the whole kind of cross-dimensional themed sci-fi genre that it is. So yeah, Noein, To Your Other Self. I'm going to explain my thoughts on the characters, the story, animation, music, just a few things, because there's quite a lot I want to talk about with this. I guess I don't want to talk about too much because obviously I don't want to give away any spoilers. Okay, so Noein is set in the port city of Hakodate in Hokkaido, which is in northern Japan. It's a location-specific anime, and most of the 26 or 25 episodes, I believe the series was, is set entirely in Hakodate and uses the same sort of locations frequently from episode to episode, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it allows you to really engross. And I felt like I was actually in the city. It was that well fleshed out. And I like that it just sticks to one location, and it keeps reusing the same scenes, and the same sort of areas. I thought it was quite nice. You felt a real good sense of belonging whilst watching this series, because you were really familiar with the setting, which is really nice. But Noein is it's set in the present in Hakodate, and the main protagonist is a young 12-year-old girl called Haruka, and she is planning on running away from home with her best friend Yu. Basically, her mum's got divorced with her dad, and her dad lives in Tokyo, and she wants to go live with her dad basically. And Yu lives alone with his mother, who's really protective and overbearing of him, wanting him to succeed, get into university, and he's really pressuring him. She's really pressuring him to do well in school and college and whatever, and he just feels really stressed. So yeah, with those pressures, these two have found just kinship amongst each other, and they're planning on running away from home. So that's the present storyline. But 15 years from the present, there is a cross-dimensional war between two factions, Lacrima, which is basically a possible future for this present, and another faction, Shangri-La, which is basically warring for dominance and trying to take over all time space, all the other dimensions, and essentially destroy them all. And in order to sway the tide in this war, both of these factions are looking for an object known as the Dragon Talk. Now, for most of the part of this series, the Dragon Talk remains somewhat of a mystery. All we know, and this isn't a spoiler, all we know is that the Dragon Talk belongs to and is Haruka, who resides in the present timeline. She not only has the Dragon Talk, but she is the Dragon Talk. There's a lot of quantum mechanic exposition in this series that can kind of go over a lot of people's heads. I know a lot of it did with me. I had to rewatch some parts because there's just so much exposition and explanation into quantum physics and stuff, which is just not my forte. But yeah, so anyway, Lacrima, which is the faction that's fighting against Shangri-La, basically they send out a special unit called the Dragon Cavalry, or the Dragon Knights, depending on how you want to say it, or what you're more familiar with. But anyway, they send out a special unit called the Dragon Knights, which go through all the dimensions searching for the Dragon Talk, to use in order to help them defeat Shangri-La. So finally stumble across the Dragon Talk in the current dimension, where 12-year-old Haruka and Yu reside. The main sort of guy who really focuses on is a guy called Karasu, and this is pretty much revealed in the first episode, so this isn't really much of a spoiler, but Karasu is, he claims to be you from 15 years in the future. And you know, it's almost hard to believe because it's such different characters. You know, the young you is really like sort of cowardly and just very childlike, but Karasu is really like regimental and, you know, really just overbearing, and you know, he just exudes power. The Dragon Knights finally find the Dragon Talk, which is Haruka, and they're basically trying to whisk her away back to Lacrima. But because you know, is friends with obviously Haruka, he's strongly opposed to this, and then Karasu eventually comes to the revelation that he wants to protect Haruka rather than, you know, allow her to be used to sway this war. So that's basically like the premise of the series. I know that sounds like a lot of spoilers, but that really is just what you learn from like the first, you know, 1 or 2 episodes. But basically, for the most part, I know there's like this like cross-dimensional war going on, but that really isn't the focus until like later on in the series. Like most of this series is actually just fleshing out the characters. You know, it focuses on like the interpersonal relationships between Haruka and Yu, and Isami, and I forget the other characters' names, but yeah, just it really fleshes out the characters. You know, sometimes you just have episodes where, you know, they're kind of just like doing things in their daily routine, like hanging out, or, you know, inviting each other for play dates at, you know, each other's house and stuff like that. And it almost seems like there's not really much relevance to these parts in the episode, but for the series that it is, you know, it really helps in, you know, developing these characters, and, you know, you really feel a sense of attachment, or at least I did for these characters. So like when stuff does happen to them, or when, you know, they do get involved in, you know, this cross-dimensional war, and, you know, their actual reality starts getting, you know, affected by this war, you know, you really do feel emotionally attached, and, you know, I do actually genuinely care about, you know, their well-being and things like that. And that's what I really like. That's what I really liked about the series, because for the genre that it is, I would have expected it to be more plot-driven, but it was actually more character-driven. And I'm all for character-driven series, even if the plot itself isn't, you know, that solid. If it's got good character development and it can make me feel attachment to the characters, then that's a win-win in my opinion. So yeah, Haruka herself, you'd expect like a 12-year-old girl to be like whiny and, you know, kind of spoiled and, you know, that kind of thing. But she, for her age, she's actually really mature, and you know, quickly kind of comes to terms with like all this crazy stuff that's going on around it, even though, you know, these kids are just, you know, modern age, you know, school kids, you know, all these different events that are, you know, completely beyond their understanding are happening around them, and they try to come to terms with it. But, you know, it's just, you know, she's a really good main character. And then you've got Yu, who, you know, if he was just by himself, you know, I'd find him really annoying, because he is really whiny, and, you know, for the most part during most of the series, it's actually really miserable and depressing. But because he's got like Haruka to kind of like perk him up and, you know, like keep him on his toes, you know, he does kind of develop that strength and, you know, wanting to protect her, which is nice. Then we've got Isami, who is like sort of Yu's kind of like buddy, you know, partner in crime sort of thing. And he's like more boisterous, you know, really into his sports and things like that. And he's kind of like another like Haruka, but like a male version. You know, always try to like, you know, pick up Yu, and, you know, try to just be like, you know, like kind of like a brother to him. He's kind of like a brother figure to Yu. Then we've got Ai, who is Haruka's like female partner in crime sort of thing. You know, like they're kind of like sisters, but, you know, just really close friends. And yeah, she's a really interesting character. You know, she's really bubbly and perky. But out of that, out of all of Haruka's friends, I'd say the most annoying one is Miho, the pink-haired one. She is just so irritating. All she goes on is aliens, aliens, because obviously all these strange events happening around them, you know, people coming from different dimensions, and, you know, loads of like quantum mechanical sort of energy blasts flying all over the place and stuff, and she's just like, oh my god, it's UFOs, and oh my god, the extraterrestrials are here, you know, or it's either aliens or ghosts, and that's literally, that's about as deep as her character gets. Aliens and ghosts, and this high-pitched squealy voice, which she just completely insufferable. I really did not like that character. And then you got these two agents on the end here, which basically work for the government, and they're basically they try to find out, like, basically the woman whose name I forget, Uchida. That's her name, Uchida. She's like she's like a quantum physicist, and she's investigating these like unusual quantum anomalies that are occurring in and around Hakodate, but she doesn't know where they're coming from or what's the purpose of them, but she can see them on like her radar, that there are these strange anomalies, and she's trying to investigate them and, you know, try to understand what's happening. So for the most part, Uchida and her bodyguard, Shadow, move, just serve as exposition for the series, and there's a lot of technical jargon that gets passed around, especially when Uchida's involved. So, you know, you really have to kind of pay attention, you know, at those moments, because, you know, I found that I had to kind of rewind and like kind of do a bit of research and things like that, because it kind of got a little bit confusing. What next? The animation. That's one thing that was very different with this, because in all of the series there's about 4 different animation styles, from what I could count, maybe three or 4. And from episode to episode it kind of changes. Like the first episode is like the one that you can get most accustomed to, and then the second episode it completely changes, and then the third episode it's different again, and it just kind of keeps switching around. At first I found it quite distracting, but as I kept on going with the series I kind of, you know, got accustomed to it, because for some episodes it really works well, but for others, you know, it's too much of a contrast to the previous episode, where it just kind of throws you off, like, oh, these characters don't really look how I, you know, imagine them to look, like, you know, when I watch the previous episode, that sort of thing. So yeah, the animation is good. The fight sequences are astonishing. There's actually a fight between a character called Fukuro and Karasu, who's, you know, the future version of you. Yeah, there's a fight between them, which is highly resemblant of the fight between Naruto and Pain Nagato. Not Pain Nagato. Just one of the 6 paths Pains in the Naruto Shippuden series. And, you know, that gets highly slated because it's so different, but there is a fight in this that's very similar to that in animation style, which I really enjoyed. The music in this is really good. It's very cinematic. There's a nice blend between like all the sort of, you know, mellow moments, you know, where the characters are always kind of like enjoying the daily routine, and, you know, there's really nice you know, ambient sort of music, you know, playing in the background, which is really nice. But then like when the action sequence comes, there's like, you know, orchestras and things like that. It's really cool. So, you know, those kind of different musical styles bounce off each other, you know, from episode to episode. This is actually, I think this is unique in my collection. It's animated by a studio called Satellite. I don't think I've got an anime in my collection that has been animated by these guys. I don't know what else they've animated, but yeah, they've done a really good job in fleshing out, you know, Hakodate and animating it really well. You know, all the characters, you know, stand out. You know, when the Dragon Cavalry are getting involved, you know, in fights, you know, you're in for a real treat, because each member of the Dragon Cavalry has like a unique power. I can't remember the name of like the weapons that they use, but there's a really strange name for the weapons that they use. But yeah, the character designs, the designs of like the creatures / spaceships that come from Shangri-La, like really strange, with like these massive like faces with like legs, like really weird bipedal creatures that kind of fly, hover in the air, and when you damage them or destroy them, like the face is contorting like fear and anger, like this expression in motion. But it's really far out. What else could I mention? You can enjoy this for 2 different reasons. You can enjoy it for the story, or you can enjoy it for the character progression. I enjoyed both. Yeah, I genuinely thought it was a really good series. The extras are really good. I mentioned in my, because I got this in October. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I mentioned in my my recent haul video that there's a documentary on this, which takes the Japanese director and the Japanese voice actress on location in Hakodate, basically doing the research, you know, talking about, you know, places that are featured in the anime, comparing, you know, places, you know, to how they were animated in the anime, you know, kind of like questions and answers and that kind of thing, which is really interesting. And Hakodate genuinely is a really beautiful place. It's got like this big mountain on it with like, you know, railway, you know, I don't know what they're called, those cable cars, going up to the mountain, which is beautiful. You know, that features well in the anime. And it's got like other features, like image galleries. That's one thing I have to say. I watched this in the English dub. When I rewatch this, I'll be rewatching it in the Japanese dub, whenever that may be. But yeah, I can't really compare the two dubs because I haven't watched the Japanese. But the English dub I thought was really good. The voice actress who plays Haruka does a really good, you know, job of playing a 12-year-old girl. You know, she doesn't make her too whiny. She doesn't make her too high pitched. You know, she kind of sounds like a mature 12-year-old, like, you know, those kind of 12-year-olds that are like still children, but you know, you can see they're kind of developing into, you know, teenagers and, you know, young adults. And that's what I really liked about Haruka. You know, she really was a strong main character for me. So yeah, really strong voice cast. Uchida, who's like the quantum physicist, has like an accent, like a southern sort of American accent, like a Texan accent, which you would assume would be kind of weird, but it's not kind of forced, it's not totally put on, it just sounds kind of natural, which is nice. All the voices for the Dragon Cavalry are really cool. But yeah, the you know, everything I like, I pretty much liked everything about this. The ending, it wasn't as climactic as I'd hoped it would be. I was satisfied with the ending, I really enjoyed the ending, but there was just a few kind of loose ends that I wish they would have wrapped up. You know, a few things that happen in the future, you know, that you don't necessarily really get to see, which I would have liked to have seen. You know, they could have at least put like maybe another 2 or 3 episodes in to kind of explain properly what actually happened. Obviously I won't reveal what happens, but you know, there are a few loose ends that I wish I would have tied up properly, which I was kind of unsatisfied with, but for the most part, you know, the ending was good. So yeah, that's my review of Noein, To Your Other Self. Tell me, you guys, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Have you seen this series? You know, did you like it? Did you not like it? Tell me why. Drop a few recommendations for things that you want me to watch, or you know, buy something, because obviously I'm building up my anime collection. I think I've got about 39 different animes on my shelf now, you know, which I'm slowly building up, surely. But yeah, Noein, To Your Other Self. Check it out. Untitled Manga signing out.